Thank you for having me here again, and hopefully I'll be able to speak and discuss a little bit about the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaura Hari, one who's taken the golden form or the mood, golden glow of Radharani. But to understand Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we really have to understand who is Radharani, because that was the desire, the reason he appeared. But to understand Radharani, we have to understand who Krishna is. And to understand who Krishna is, we have to understand who we are. When Sanatana Goswami approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he didn't get into so many esoteric questions. His first question was, Kayami, who am I? Right? When you go to the mall, or you look at a map, you have to know where you are before you can go somewhere else. So the Vedic society, the Vedic culture was that, to try to understand who you are and what are your particular desires, because it's all based on desire, just like we're all here tonight, because we had a desire to come and participate in this wonderful festival of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So everything is based on desire. And the path of Vedic culture was two: the path of Parvati Marg or the path of Nivriti Marg, the path of enjoyment and the path of negation or renunciation, of detachment. And the Vedas, we know that Srila Vyasadeva, he separated the Vedas into four: the Rig, the Sama, the Atharva, and the Yajna Vedas. The Vedas mostly deal with these subjects of the Parvati Marg aspect of our existence, doing different sacrifices, dealing with marriages, health, deceased, funerals, how to manage a government, so forth. And within that, there are many yajnas, because you have artha. Artha means economic development. Then you have kama, desire. You have a desire, but you need the means to do this. Then dharma, religion. So the Vedas deal mostly with that aspect of the dharma of fulfilling people's material desires. But at that stage, there's no mention of Radharani. There's no understanding of that. There's a little bit of demigod worship and so forth. Then you move on to the 18 Puranas. 6 are in the mode of ignorance, are dealing with that aspect. 6 are dealing with the mode of passion. 6 are dealing with the mode of goodness. And at that level, there's description of Durga, Shiva, Vishnu, but it's intermixed. It's not clear exactly who's who in all that sphere. And just like we have the Guna avatars, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, and sometimes they seem to be equal. They're all avatars. They're all. So it's a little confusing to know exactly what is the absolute truth. And then you have that aspect of moksha, when people have satisfied their lust, their desires in the form of kama with artha, and they've done this in relation to dharma, religiously pursuit, because people don't want to commit sins, and like you throw water on the fire, you'll extinguish that fire. So then, once you become frustrated, realizing that there's really no pleasure in this world, and people want moksha, they want liberation, like the Buddhists, nirvana, no more existence, and the Mayavadis, it's all one, nirvishesha sunyavadi, we're all one. So then you have the 108 Upanishads that deal with that level of consciousness. And it's still not clear. Like there are verses that describe how the Lord walks and does not walk. He's very far, but very near. It's kind of an abstract understanding. It's not very clear. Is he a person? But if he's a person, how can he be close and far? So it brings you to that kind of understanding of the Brahman, the effulgence of the Lord, rather than the personal form of the Lord. Then we move on, we have the Ramayana, we have the Mahabharata, which are more personal. They're dealing with Lord Ram, they're dealing with Krishna. But still, it's kind of a story. It's not clear if Ram is really the supreme, because it's a little romantic. Ram is in love with Sita. He loses, he can't get his kingdom. He's been banished, and his wife gets kidnapped by Ravana. Then they kill Ravana, come back. Finally, he's inaugurated, he becomes the king. So it's nice, and people like this kind of things. But it's not, unless you're a Vaishnava, then you might understand that Ram is Krishna. But people who just read like that, they might see it's a nice tale, nice fairy tale, nice. And then you move on to the Mahabharata. But the Mahabharata, if you really read it entirely, you find out, if you summarize it, it's the suffering of Kunti and the five Pandavas. Kunti lost her husband Pandu very young. She couldn't enter the fire at Madri, so she had to take care of five sons. Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra are very envious of the Pandavas. They're always trying to, they send them in the house of Shalak to burn alive, and so forth and so on. Then there's a whole battle of Kurukshetra that takes place. So there's a lot of intrigue, and intertwined into that is Krishna. Lord Krishna is there, but he's always serving the Pandavas. The Pandavas are really, the Mahabharata is really about the Pandavas. And Krishna is a little bit in the background. So we've got all these different literatures, all these different, but even the Mahabharata, there's no mention of Radharani. There's no mention, and the Krishna who portrays, who acts in the pastime of the Mahabharata is really Krishna in the mood of Narayan, because Nandanandana Krishna doesn't kill demons. It's only Vasudeva Krishna who comes and kills the demons. And Vasudeva Krishna is more with Lakshmi, the goddess like Rukmini, the wives in Dwarka. So when Krishna appears, he appears in Mathura, but his parents are imprisoned, Vasudeva, Devaki, and Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj in Gokul, they also give, Mother Yashoda also gives birth to Krishna and to Yogamaya. And then Krishna comes and gets exchanged. Vasudeva leaves, goes there, and Vasudeva Krishna enters Nandanandana Krishna. And Vasudeva takes Yogamaya back to Mathura. So later on, after Krishna has enacted different pastimes, he kills Putana, he kills different demons, Aghasura, Bakasura, and so forth. Then Nakula comes and brings him back to Mathura to kill Kamsa. There, Krishna kills Kamsa. There are two wives of Kamsa, Prapti and Nasti. They're the daughters of Jarasandha. They go, obviously, complain to their dad that Krishna killed his own uncle. Jarasandha attacks Mathura 21 times. Finally, Krishna ends up in Dwarka. Again, there's no description of Radharani in these particular pastimes. And Mahabharata, after Srila Vyasadeva has written all the Vedas, he's written the Puranas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, he's feeling dissatisfied. And he's kind of bewildered that I should be content. Look at all the work I've done. But he's not. And then Narada Muni appears, his guru, and tells him, and there's a nice verse here. I took some note because I often just get sidetracked in things. And let's see. Anyway, he describes to Narada Muni, Narada Muni describes to Srila Vyasadeva that, aren't you tired of just writing things that are just basically dealing with the material body? They're not really that spiritual. And even Krishna, of course, in the Mahabharata, there's the Bhagavad Gita. And even Krishna says that, that you, Arjuna, you rise above the Vedas because they're mostly dealing with the three modes of nature in your own fashion and goodness. So now, In his meditation, Srila Vyasadeva will write the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is more precisely bringing Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. It's going to be elaborating and explaining very clearly that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you have Krishna being described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He comes as Lord Nrsimhadev, as Lord Varaha, he comes as Vamanadev, he comes as Vrishabdev, and ultimately comes as Lord Ram. There's a description there also in the Bhagavatam of Lord Ram. But right up to the 9th canto, there's still no description of Radharani, which is why Lord Chaitanya came. It's only when we get to the 10th canto that we really start understanding a little bit about Radha and what is her position. And when Krishna is in Dwarka, after leaving Mathura, he goes to Dwarka, he defeats Bhaumasura. Bhaumasura had kidnapped 16,000 princesses. So Krishna goes and kills Bhaumasura. Bhaumasura happened to be, when Lord Varaha lifted the earth, Bhumi, they fostered this Bhaumasura. He was the child of Bhumi, the earth. But he became a great demon because he associated with Banasura. They were both worshippers of Lord Shiva. So he had the benediction that he could not be killed. Only his own mother could kill him. So when Krishna went to kill Bhaumasura, he brought Satyabhama with him, Satyabhama is also the incarnation of Bhumi. She's the Bhu energy of the Lord. So Krishna married, after all these girls, the princesses, couldn't marry anybody because Vedic culture was so strict that no one would dare take them. So Krishna married them. And sometimes people don't understand the position of Krishna. They prefer Ram because Ram, he's so noble. He only has one wife, Sita. Kings normally have many wives. He only has one. Remains very loyal to her, very chaste. But Krishna, who's this fellow? He's dancing with the gopis. He's got so many wives. This is not an example for our kids. Right? This is not the person we want to show for our children. Because there's no understanding. The reason Krishna did this, he married all these, because no one else would. And because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's like the sun. He can purify anything and everything. And everything already belongs to him. Aham Bija Pratakpita, he's the father of all living entities. Everything belongs to him. So this is actually Krishna's kindness, that he's acting in this way. And even though he's surrounded, when Narada Muni comes, he sees that Lord Krishna has 16,108 palaces, and he's doing different things in all these different palaces. And even Narada Muni is very bewildered about this, very surprised. And even though that Krishna is with meaning, we cannot even fathom, imagine who is Rukmini, Satyabhama, Mitravinda, all these exalted queens. Krishna at night, he dreams. And he sometimes speaks in his dream. And his speaking is that he's lamenting that he's not with Radharani. So Rukmini sometimes wakes up and she realizes that despite all this big opulence, all this wealth, beauty, everything, Krishna is not satisfied. He's anchoring his desires for something else. It's for Radharani. Then we have the pastime of Rath Yatra, where Krishna, there's an eclipse and everyone's coming to Kurukshetra. And there, Krishna comes, but he's in the avatar of a king. And Radharani comes, the family of Krishna, Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, they come. And Radharani sees Krishna in this awesome setting as a king. Satyaki's there, his chariot driver and counselor. There's so many other people with Krishna. And she can recognize that you're Krishna, you're the same person as I knew in Vrindavan, but this is not the place and this is not the mood. And she wants to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. Jagannath Puri, when they do the Rath Yatra, there's a place called Gundija, which is considered to be Vrindavan. There's a garden there. And Jagannath is brought there for 7 days, which represents Radharani pulling Krishna away from the Jagannath temple is considered to be Dwarka, away from Dwarka. So we see that Radharani is not bewildered in the sense that, oh, let me go and become a queen. She could have gone back, go with Krishna to Dwarka and become one of the queens, but she has no interest in that. She wants Krishna in Vrindavan. That is her position. A very extreme, powerful position. And Krishna is desiring that. So we have to understand a little bit what the position of Radharani is. Radharani's position is that Krishna belongs to me. And there's a rival personality called Chandravali. Her mood is that I belong to Krishna. So it's very subtle. You say, well, it's the same. No, there's a big difference. Just like you have a very nice car, a Mercedes, and we're going to some program, some engagement. So I'm driving you to that engagement. That's very nice. But if I give you the keys to my car and I say, you drive it, that's quite different. That means I really trust you. Otherwise, I won't let you drive. I don't know how you do that close that I would want you to drive my car. The other thing is that if I drive you somewhere, that's nice, we'll talk. But 2 weeks later, if I ask you, oh, you went to that program, you went to that engagement, could you take me there? You'll say, oh, I don't really remember. I mean, someone else drove me and I wasn't paying that attention. But if you drive to that place, you'll remember much more. You'll immediately know how to get there because the intensity of driving and paying attention was a lot more. So Radharani is that personality that Krishna gives the keys. She controls Krishna. Everyone wants Krishna. We're all chanting Hare Krishna. We all want Krishna. People go to Vrindavan. But what does Krishna want? He wants Radharani. That's the intensity of Radharani, that she even controls Krishna. And her mood is not, sometimes when Krishna goes with Chandravali, she gets angry at Krishna. But it's not out of a desire that, okay, I'm not being gratified, I'm not getting attention here. But it's more, what is Krishna doing? Obviously, this person cannot satisfy him. So why is he wasting his time there? Yeah. She knows that she's the only one actually who can satisfy Krishna. Because she's the Nagini Shakti potency of the Lord. She's the pleasure potency of Krishna. Krishna's got Sandini potency. Parasha Shakti Vivideya Shriyate. He has many potencies. But one of his potencies is Sandini, means eternity. But that aspect creates the varieties of forms by which we see each other and so forth. And then Sanvit is cognitive awareness. I'm aware that I'm alive, I'm aware I'm here, I'm aware you're there, you're aware of me. That ability to be aware. So you have the form and you have the awareness, but what are we looking? The other energy of Krishna is Lila, pastimes. And that Lila manifests through Srimati Radharani, that ability to enjoy, because we're all looking for pleasure. So she is the embodiment of that. Just like when you build a fire, you have light, but you have heat and you have smoke. The fire is nice, the light is nice, but most people don't build fires for that. They build fires for heat. So Radharani is that heat, that energy that we feel, oh, that's nice, it's warm, and very comfortable. So now, Krishna, there are two pastimes. Well, actually, One where Krishna is dancing with the gopis. And in that group, there were new gopis also. Because when Lord Ram was in the forest, he met many sages. And many of these sages wanted a more intimate relationship with Ram. So he told them, in my next incarnation as Krishna, you could come and take form as women. So they were dancing in the rasa dance. But Radharani wasn't feeling so happy. There were new people there, so forth. So Krishna manifested desire of arrogance in the gopis, that they felt so wow, so privileged. Look who I am now, I'm dancing with Krishna. And Krishna didn't like that arrogance. We should be very humble, more humble than the blade of grass. So this pastime was manifested and Krishna disappeared. So the gopis, of course, went running everywhere to find him. And Krishna was hiding behind a bush. So when they came, he manifested his two other arms as Narayan, four-armed. Gopis are not very interested in that aspect of the Lord, but they could recognize the Supreme Lord. But they're not in Aishwarya Bhav, like in Dwarka, Mathura. Those devotees, they have awe and reverence for the Lord. The Lord's a king, there's protocol to follow and so forth. But the gopis have a very more intimate relationship. Actually, gopis don't really care if Krishna is God in one sense. When Mother Yashoda, Balaram and his friends said, oh, Krishna ate some dust, some earth. So I said, no, I didn't eat anything. Yes, he did. So then Mother Yashoda said, open your mouth. So when he opened his mouth, she saw all the universes. And she became momentarily bewildered. What is this? Maybe my son's a demigod, maybe he's mystic power. But that went away instantly. She didn't enjoy that consciousness. And she said, okay, go and play. Don't do any more nonsense. So the gopis came, and Krishna was disguised in that form as Narayan, and they requested, oh, have you seen Krishna? He said, yes. And went this way. So they all left. But when Srimati Radharani came, Krishna couldn't hide that form. His two arms fell. And he had to assume the form of Krishna again. So that would bewilder him. He was thinking, how come when all the gopis came, I could hide myself, but this Radharani comes and I can't do it. The intensity of her love is such that I couldn't hide myself. And when Chaitanya Prabhu was in Jagannath Puri, stayed there for so many years, whenever there was Rath Yatra, we know when Rath Yatra takes place, Jagannath for some period gets sick. So Lord Chaitanya could not see Lord Jagannath. So he used to go to this temple, Alanath temple, which is about 10 kilometers away from the Jagannath temple. And there's a deity of Narayan. But when Lord Chaitanya would go to see that deity, he would only see Krishna. The two arms would fall in his vision, in his consciousness. He would see that same deity represents that Narayan deity that hid when the gopis manifested with the rasa dance. So that intensity of Radharani conquers Krishna. And to add some intimacy, Radharani she's actually not, there are two rasas or relationship that these devotees have on the level of Madhurya Ras. You have Swakiya and Parakiya. Swakiya, the queens of the worka that are actually married to Krishna. But Parakiya, there's no marriage. Krishna is not married, and Radharani is married to Abhimanyu, and she lives in Yava. And this is to simply enhance the pastime. Actually, Abhimanyu is considered to be like the shadow of Krishna. But no one actually can touch Radharani except Krishna. But Abhimanyu is and his mother Jatila and his sister Kutila, they're always trying to avoid Krishna meeting Radharani. Although she's given permission for Radharani to go and cook for Krishna every morning. Krishna goes every day Radha goes every day to cook for Krishna. She leaves Yavat, she goes to Nandagram, and she cooks for Krishna. And at first, Jatila was not very happy for that. But Purnamasi, who's considered the guru, she sanctioned it because she says Radha has received a blessing from the Vasamuni. Whatever she cooks, then the person eating that will have longevity, will be very prosperous, very healthy, and so forth. But generally speaking, Jatila doesn't want Radha and Krishna to be together. So there's always these pastimes going on. And this is externally, there are three reasons why Lord Chaitanya appeared, and there are three internal reasons why Lord Chaitanya manifested. Of course, Lord Krishna came 5,000 years ago. Lord Chaitanya came about 500 years ago. And the situation in Navadvip was very degraded. As far as Vaishnav, there was barely any Vaishnavs. Most were Durga worshippers, Shaka worshippers. And even today, if you go to Bengal, Durga Puja is a huge, huge thing. Incredible. I was there when we were stuck in Calcutta. We were on the way to Mayapur, and we spent the night in Calcutta. It was Durga Puja. It was wild. So, and there were many Nyaya scholars just enjoying debating, just like people play chess, right? They enjoy. So, but that was their pastime, to just debate, argue, so forth. And of course, there were characters like Jagai and Madai, very drunkards, degraded personalities. So Advaita Acharya felt very bad that this is the situation, this is the plight of our. And he didn't feel himself qualified, able to do anything about it. So he prayed for the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, that if you come, my Lord, you've got the Shakti, you've got the power to change the situation. So that was one reason, to satisfy the plight or the desire of Advaita Acharya, his prayers. He came, Lord Chaitanya came. Then there was also to inaugurate the Sankirtan, or the chanting of the holy name. In Satya Yuga, it was meditation. Then in Treta Yuga, sacrifice. In Dwapara Yuga, deity worship. And in Kali Yuga, even deity worship has become difficult. To be very punctual, very suchi, so forth. So the chanting of the holy name, anyone can, and even we say everyone, but not everyone actually can chant the names of Krishna, unfortunately. But that's what he came to give, the chanting of the holy name. He came to inaugurate the Sankirtan, and also to give a higher level of understanding, Raganuga Bhav. When Krishna came, Sarvadhamam Parichaja, you surrender. But that wasn't very high understanding of spiritual life or spiritual understanding, because we surrender to many things. Just like we all surrender to the government, we all pay our income tax. But it's not like we love the government because we pay our taxes. It's some obligation that we feel. So people might feel obligated, okay, I don't want to suffer, I don't want to, so I'll surrender. And Krishna says, if you surrender, I'll give you some shelter. So there's some consideration on our part that, okay, if I need shelter, I need protection, God is going to give me that. So it wasn't a very high understanding of what devotion is really. Rupa Goswami says, Anya Bilasita Sunyam Jnana Karma Anavritam Anunukula Krishna Silanam Bhakti Uchate. And it has to be devoid from Karma Mishra and Jnana Mishra. Karma Mishra means, yes, I'll do something, I'll give a donation, I'll give some bakshish to the deity, but I'm expecting so much more in return. So I gave $100, I should get 1,000 back. So that sometimes people are pious. It's good, it's pious. 4 kinds of people come to Krishna. Those are distressed, those are materially impoverished, those who are curious, those who are wise. So materially impoverished people come to Krishna. but there's some desire for something. And then Jnana Mishra, speculative understanding, is Krishna the Absolute, is Brahman, is this thing, Shiva, Durga, so many speculations that are there also, Jnana Mishra, not a full, clear understanding. And when Lord Chaitanya met Ramananda Roy, these are the things that Ramananda Roy was the minister of the king. And when he met Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya inquired from him. He said, I'm just a Mayavadi sannyasi. Lord Chaitanya at that time had taken sannyas. And he had met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Jagannath Puri. So when he met Ramananda Roy, who was the minister of Bhattapudra Maharaj, who was the king at the time of Puri, Odisha. So Lord Chaitanya inquired from him, what is the best position to be in? And Ramananda Roy started by saying, well, if one acts according to Parashara Muni, the father of Srila Vyasadeva, if you act according to the Varnashram, then that is the best. You have to go much further than that. What is Varnashram? Varnashram is a system to deal with our insanities. That's what Varnashram is. We're all insane. We all think we're these bodies. So just like when you have a fire, you have dampers to control the fire. Otherwise, you'll burn their whole house. For material desires, you can go insane to try to fulfill them. So the Varnashram is a means to box you in so that you don't go insane in the process of trying to satisfy your desires. But that position is like being in the basement. Varnashram is like living in the basement. It's okay, you protected, the rain won't fall on your head, and but it's not a very comfortable place. Then you have in the house, you can go in the kitchen. That's a nice place. You go and eat and so forth. So that's like Vaidhi Bhakti. In Sadhana Bhakti, there's two spheres. There's Vaidhi and Raganuga. We practice Sadhana Bhakti, but we practice it mostly on Vaidhi platform. Vaidhi is rules and regulations. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes this to be like the under of a leaf. If you have a leaf, you have the under part and the upper part. So Vaidhi is the bottom part of the leaf, and then Raganuga is the top part. Same leaf, but different consciousness, different levels of awareness. So if you really want to be comfortable, then you go lie down in your room. That's what normally. So that's like Raganuga platform. There's a higher understanding, a higher level of tattva. So then Ramananda Roy went on, after Lord Chaitanya rejected or said, okay, but move on. Then Ramananda Roy described that Yat karosi yadashnasi yajahosi dadasya yatapasyasi kunteya mat purusham arapanam. That whatever you do, whatever activity you perform, should be done as an offering unto me. Well, Lord Chaitanya said, okay, that's not good also. Why? Why it's not good? Well, because it's just dovetailing your propensity. I want this, I want that, and I'll just offer it and get it sanctioned. But it's not I am still the center. That's the problem with a lot of these yogas. People practice a lot of yoga nowadays. The difference between Bhakti Yoga and all these other yogas is Bhakti puts Krishna in the center. While all these other yogas, you keep yourself, ahamameti, that I'm the center, and I'm the enjoyer, and I'm just changing the means of that enjoyment. I'm just alternating, but I'm still want to be the enjoyer. But the process of Bhakti Yoga is to try to put Krishna in front. I probably used to give the example that you have so many zeros, but when you put Krishna in the front, then you have 10, 100, 1,000. So in this way, Ramananda Roy went on to the point of even Sarvadamam Parichajamam Ekam Saranam Raja. And Ramananda Roy Lord Chaitanya again rejected that. And he wanted him to go even further. So these are the three external reasons why Lord Chaitanya came to satisfy Advaita Acharya's prayers, to inaugurate the Sankirtan movement, and to bring people to a higher level of consciousness. And that's the mood of Lord Chaitanya. When Lord Chaitanya was in the Gambhira for so many years, he was absorbed in that state of consciousness of thinking of Radharani 24 hours a day. And sometimes he would also think of Krishna and the pastimes. And sometimes he would fall in the ocean. And his bhav was such that all his joints would elongate. They couldn't recognize him. The one time he was caught by a fisherman, and the fisherman, by touching the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, thought he had touched a ghost because he started chanting Hare Krishna, and couldn't stop. So he thought he'd been haunted. And meanwhile, Sri Damodar and others were looking everywhere for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because the Lord would disappear. He'd start running. And if you go to Jagannath Puri, there's a temple of Tota Gopinath. I know some of you have been to Jagannath Puri. So when you enter the temple of Tota Gopinath, if you look on the right across the street on an angle, there's sand dunes there. And these dunes are some of the places that Lord Chaitanya would see Govardhan Hill, and he'd run there and he would faint. So internally, also, there's the internal reasons why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. He came to understand what is the relationship between him, Krishna and Radha, and what is the attraction that Radharani has for Krishna, and what is she feeling when she's serving Krishna. So that's like the example I was giving, that you have a nice car and you're going somewhere and you give the key to your friend and you say, okay, you drive. But now I'm the passenger, it's my car, but I'm seeing you how you're driving, and I'm asking you, teach me how to drive. I am enjoying this wave. Your ability to drive is so great that I want to learn how you're driving. So although Krishna, everything belongs to him. Bhoktaram jagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sadhutanam gyatpravam chantanashati. Sarvaloka, everything belongs to him. But he wants to know, how is Radharani? How is she? What is her feeling? Why is she serving me? Why is she so attracted to me? And what is she feeling when she's actually serving? That is what Chaitanya's mood. That's why Krishna comes as Lord Chaitanya, to try to understand that relationship that Radha has with Krishna. And us Gaudiya Vaishnavas, that is ultimately where we want to participate in that relationship by the 9 processes of bhakti: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padam Sevanam, Archanam, Dasyam, Atmanivedanam. Atmanivedanam is Bali Maharaj. He surrendered everything. But Radharani's surrender is such that it attracts Krishna. He becomes bewildered by her surrender. Of course, the gopis, they're all very surrendered to Krishna. Krishna says that, as you surrender, I'll reward you accordingly. But the gopis, they left in the middle of the night when Krishna played his flute, oblivious to all social convention, not caring what will be the result. They just ran to Krishna. And when Krishna saw them, he told them, what are you doing here? Don't you know it's middle of the night? You're meeting me, a man, right? What are your husbands? And everyone's going to. And they rushed so much that some of them didn't comb themselves. They didn't one earring, miss one, half a lipstick. They just took off. And Krishna was teasing them in that way, that why you've come here. And they didn't know, what do we do? You have to accept us. We've come here now. You have no choice. So Krishna told them that you're so dedicated to me that normally I can pay devotees back, but now I can't. This is beyond, the limits. So I'll have to stay a debtor. And to pay, in one sense, that debt, that recognition, Krishna is glorifying Radharani by assuming that form, that mood of Lord Chaitanya. And when what was the bull, Aristasura? When Aristasura came to Vrindavan, big bull, very strong bull, breaking everything. So Krishna had to do something. So Krishna killed him, killed this bull. And then he went to see Radharani. And, he was expecting to say, oh, bravo, wow, it's great, you killed this demon. And said, hey, don't touch me, don't come close. Krishna was surprised. What are you talking about? You just killed the bull. You've committed such a great sin. He said, no. It was a bull, but as a demon disguised as a bull. Still, it was a bull. Well, what am I going to do now? Well, you can't come close to me. Don't touch me. Yeah, but what do I do? Well, you'll have to atone for your sin. You'll have to go to all the holy places, all the holy rivers, and bathe there. And once you've done that, then you can come back. Krishna said, I can't do that. How can I leave? Go to all the holy... It makes no sense what to do. So he started with his Gaura boys. They dug Shamakund. And Krishna invited all these rivers, holy rivers, to come and fill that gut. And then he bathed there. When Radharani saw that, her and her friends took all their bangles and they dug Radhakund. But there was no water coming. So then Krishna called all of them and said, please go but get permission from Radharani. So Radha said, yes, no problem. But when you go to Vrindavan, you hardly hear about Shamakund. It's all Radhakund, right? Radha is and when you go to Vrindavan, you say Hare Krishna, someone will say, nay, Jaya Radhe. This is the place of Radharani. And we say Radha Krishna, Laxminath. We don't say Krishna Radha. We all say Radha Krishna. So I wanted to just help us understand how far we have to come, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Upanishad, the Mahabharata, 9 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, before we can even start understanding that intimacy pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And beyond that, once we really understand that particular tattva, then we can understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's a very high topic that most people, much farther than God's Almighty, and He's very powerful, and this Aishwarya Bhav. But this is a much higher understanding of God consciousness, the depth. And we're so fortunate in one sense that by Srila Prabhupada's grace, we've all had an honorary degree. Honorary degree means that you did something, but you didn't have to really go to university and really get the diploma. But you've done something socially that they figured, oh, you must be able to get that, so we'll just give it to you. We won't hassle you to go through all the steps to have you recognized as a doctor, but we'll give it to you. So in that sense, we're so fortunate that we don't have to make all these steps. We've been honored by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Nyasi Sugurike Hai, Krishna Tadvaveta Siguru Hai. One of his wonderful mercy, because he's so intoxicated in that love of Radharani, that he's prepared to give prem to anyone. He made Haridas Thakur, who was born a Muslim, the Namacharya. And when Advaita Acharya was honoring Haridas Thakur, many of the Smarta Brahmins, they wanted to humiliate Advaita Acharya. So they put Kali articles as if he was a Kali worshiper and all that, just to defame him, because they were very disturbed that he would do such a thing. And, well, we're all the Brahmins here, and he's giving the honor to Haridas Thakur. So Lord Chaitanya accepted, like the Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatan specifically, they had lost their caste because they were Brahmins, but they started becoming the ministers for this Nawab, I think it was Nawab San, who was the ruler of the time, but a Muslim ruler. So they even lost their name. They became Saka Malik and Dabir Kas, like that. So they lost their Hindu names. But Lord Chaitanya accepted them, and he made them even Goswamis. So this is the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that we're so fortunate that we're benefiting from his appearance even 500 years ago. We're reaping the fruits of what he sowed because we're able to take to this Krishna consciousness. And even, of course, through Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada's mercy, that even when we go to India, of course, some of you are born in India, so it's not maybe the problem, but for someone like me, you go to India, we're allowed to go to every temple. There's just very few temples in all of India. I've been to everywhere in India. Even Tirupati, you go there, they let you in, see the deities. There was one South Indian temple in Vrindavan which did not allow us to go in, but now they're allowing the Western devotees to go in. There's, of course, Jagannath Puri, we can't go. We can't go into this Gundicha temple and also Alanath because it's all the same administration. But everywhere else, you go to Tirupati, Guruvayur, you go to Srirangam, all these temples, they recognize they were Vaishnavas. And this is all due to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who inaugurated the Sankirtan movement. And now it's spread all over the world. So we're so fortunate that we can take to this, we can read these wonderful pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Mangal, there are different biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that we can read, different pastimes, and absorb ourselves. They're right there. He's pointing out they're there. Some of you want to purchase some, you can. They're there. So maybe I'll stop here. Is it time now? Yes. So we'll stop here. I know if some of you have any particular question. Maybe you were hoping to hear a lot of pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but I thought, which we normally do on these occasions, but I thought maybe this would be a different angle to meditate upon, to understand how deep Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how far our consciousness has to go to be able to really appreciate who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and what he's come and what he's given us. So thank you very much. Question.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for a wonderful lecture. I just want to ask if in Dwapara Yuga the main sacrifice is deity worship and in Kali Yuga is chanting, why we still worship?
Well, because it's like two tracks on the train. There's a chanting of the holy name, and also deity worship is still very important to regulate ourselves, so that we become regulated through the archa, vigraha, the worship of the Lord in that sense. But that alone, just the worship alone, is not sufficient in this age to bring you back to Godhead. The Sankirtan, the chanting of the holy name, Golokera Primadan Harinam Sankirtan. So the holy name has come in Kali Yuga. The Lord has come in the form of his holy name. I don't know if that answers your question. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Probably you mentioned again. We were missing you in Montreal. I thought they kidnapped you not a while. They must have kidnapped you. Such a good devotee. They must have grabbed you. Oh, go ahead, please.
You mentioned that the advancement of Krishna consciousness and understanding the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by first Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leelas. So for us, we as amateurs, what should be the process? Because it's a pretty long process to understand the mood, to get in the process. Because sometimes we don't know the full Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu.
Yeah, my point wasn't that you start reading the Vedas and follow all these things. I mean, the blessings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is we can skip all these things and immediately come to understanding of Krishna and Radha. And of course, the understanding through Bhagavad Gita, there's an aspect that we do understand Bhagavad Gita, but that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants us to rise above all that. So especially Gaudiya Vaishnava, our emphasis is really Krishna. We're not even emphasizing Vishnu, although we acknowledge Vishnu, but our emphasis is really on Krishna. When you go to South India, you'll see many Mahavishnu and many, and other sampradayas emphasize that. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and emphasized Krishna, and he inaugurated the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Not Vishnu Sahasranam or things like that, but really the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So immediately we're focused on Krishna, and our worship is Radha and Krishna. So that's our focus. But within that sphere of Krishna, there are many levels of understanding, there are many levels of relationship. So that we have to try to understand. But the Sankirtan, Chaito Darpanam Marjanam is the cleansing of the heart. There has to be a cleansing of the heart so that our desires, as I was saying in the beginning, it's all based on desires. So what is my desire? What am I looking for? What am I hankering after? So as we cleanse our heart, then we'll actually realize that really what I need is Krishna. Nothing else can satisfy me. So that's...
Just a quick so I was in Vrindavan and just a curiosity, there are some people in Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy who were following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and their worshipful deity is Radharani, not the Krishna. So how it is different?
They worship Radharani alone?
No, their worship, no, Radha and Krishna both, but their Ishdev means worshipful deity is Radharani.
That's not, that's not our process. You can't worship Radharani alone. It's Radha and Krishna. If you try to separate them, just like if you just try to worship Lord Chaitanya without Lord Nityananda, then that's not proper. You have to worship Gaura Nityananda and Chaitanya. There's a whole pastime of that with Minika Ram that neglected, wasn't. But you have to worship Radha and Krishna, not just Radha.
And in some context,
because if you're trying to please Radha, her Ishtadev, her worshipful Lord is Krishna. So if you just worship her, she's not going to be happy. She wants you to worship Krishna, but we go through Radharani. We can't approach Krishna directly. Gopi Bhartam Parakamanam Dasa Dasa Dasanuda. So we try to get the blessings of Radharani so that we can serve Krishna, but ultimately we want to serve Krishna.
Krishna, thank you so much for. I'm sure there's many more questions to come, and maybe after there will be some time to ask Laxminath Prabhu or have a discussion. But now we're going to go to the next part of our program, which is going to be the Abhishek. And excuse me, Krishna. Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, Shama Gopinath, Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai.